evolving in CAMHS Wexford South.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Minister, and thanks for joining us. Minister, you'll be well aware of CAMHS in Arden House in Wexford. We had a 3-year absence of a child psychologist, and finally an appointment was made last August, I'm glad to say. And according to the Government's Vision for Change document, a full complement of staff, were it to be had, would be 1 consultant psychologist, Wexford has, 1 doctor in training, no, there's 1 NCHD, which is a non-committed hospital doctor, 2 mental health nurses, Wexford, yes, 2 clinical nurse specialists, 2 clinical psychologists, Wexford has 1 clinical psychologist, 2 social workers, we have 1 agency social worker, 1 occupational therapist, yes, Wexford has, 1 speech and language therapist, no, we have a half-time speech and language therapist, 1 childcare worker, none, 2 administrative staff, yes. Now the referrals are being rejected at a rate of knots at CAMHS in Wexford. Basically Arden House has done no ADHD assessment since December of 2021. And Minister, 46% of all referrals in the HSE's own stats are ADHD, and not 1 has been carried out in Wexford for 6 months. I've had numerous representations from GPs who have complained to me that they sit down with mental health patients, young children, adolescents, they spend a long time filling in arduous forms to have them rejected by CAMHS. They're just not seeing them. I then get the family who make the same complaint. What's happening? These children, some weeks later, are ending up in the DOP in Waterford, having tried to take their own lives, being referred back from the DOP to Arden House to be seen then. Now, Minister, that's just not good enough, and not in any woman's or man's language. So, you know, people are looking at this, families are looking at this in despair that their children are being rejected and they're being referred by their GP. And as I say, worst case scenario is they try to take their own lives before they're seen. But what has us here today? Before I move on to that, I have something I want you to listen to from the psychiatrist who resigned his position in CAMHS, Dr. Kieran Moore, 3 years ago because there were no support services. So it's an article that's published that he wrote. It's Dr. Kieran Moore. He's a consultant psychiatrist, consultant paediatric liaison psychiatrist. And basically what he is saying is there's one thing the HSE does well, and that is hire managers. But let me just read the extract. According to its own website, the Health Service Executive in Ireland provides health and social services to everyone living in Ireland, young and old, in hospitals, health facilities and communities. The website also says the HSE is required under Section 35 of the Health Act of 2004 to have in place a code of governance. Governance can be identified and defined as the framework of rules, practices and policies by which an organisation can ensure accountability, fairness, transparency in an organisation's relationship with its stakeholders. And almost every employee working in the HSE is regulated externally. However, there is no external regulation for managers. And what has arisen today in Wexford, it's all over the national media and the social media. We have a clinical nurse specialist with 30 years experience, 14 years in CAMHS, being moved from his position in Arden House to North County Wexford at a time when the other clinical nurse specialist is going on maternity leave, and both are being replaced by what they would refer to as an acting clinical nurse with 2 years' experience to take care of 170 families. I have been inundated, Minister, with the distressed families who are suffering at the hands of this. Whoever made this decision, Minister, please.
Minister Mary Butler.
Deputy, thank you very much for raising this. And look, we've been across the floor to each other many times, and I just want to acknowledge the amount of times and the interest you have in mental health services for young people and older people. Thank you. So, in relation to, I suppose, a couple of points I want to touch on first, but in relation to the last point you made, was I aware of the situation or the crisis situation in CAMHS Wexford South, where a senior clinical nurse, so a clinical nurse specialist, is to be relocated to another unit, leaving Arden House Wexford with just 1 clinical nurse serving a current 200 patients population. So the HSE, I suppose, the area director of nursing who bears overall clinical and operational responsibility for mental health nursing governance, at times indicates that the rotation of staff is part and parcel of strategic workforce. It is part of efforts to build the capacity for the service and to support continuing professional development for the staff themselves. It is also part of keeping staff motivated and rejuvenated, and it's an integral part of ensuring high quality and innovative patient care. So a number of such rotations has occurred in the past, but also this week in relation to both adult mental health services and child and adult mental health services, these rotations are taking place. So in respect of the South Wexford CAMHS clinical nurse specialist, the HSE has indicated, as you said, that the South Wexford CAMHS CNS is moving to North Wexford, and the North Wexford CAMHS CNS is moving to South Wexford CAMHS on the 16th of May next. So there is no reduction of nurse staff complement in Wexford CAMHS. So there will be 2 CNS posts at Arden House, and there will be 2 CNS posts in Wexford CAMHS at Arden House and at Arnold House for the North Wexford CAMHS. So that's the situation as set out to me. You spoke a lot about the multidisciplinary teams, and the multidisciplinary teams are so important, and it was so difficult to get that consultant psychologist into place. It went on for a long time. Since I've come in a year and a half ago, we spent a long time trying to make sure that that post, it was expedited, it was prioritised, and thankfully that post has now been filled. And I know you went through the teams, and there are some gaps. So as you know, we have 73 CAMHS teams throughout the whole country. And what we're doing at the moment, as a result, I suppose, of what happened in Kerry CAMHS, we're doing an audit of every single team in the country. So the audit is in 3 parts. So one part, which is independent and is outsourced, is to look at the composition of every single team in Ireland, all 73 teams, the makeup of the teams, the gaps in the teams, and to look at the governance and are they operating to standard operating procedures. So I'll have all that data available to me. We're also doing another audit, and that audit is also independent. It's been done by one of the universities. They're going to talk to the children, the parents and the families of those using CAMHS services to see what their experience has been like. Were they able to access CAMHS? Were they not able to access CAMHS? And how they got on. That's the second part. And the third part then is the piece in relation to the audit into potential overprescribing, which happened down in Kerry South. And that's a big body of work. And I was adamant from the very start. You mentioned ADHD, and you spoke about, approximately 40 to 45% of presentations are ADHD. And the HSE were very, very clear. They only wanted to audit ADHD presentations. But no, I was very, very clear that it had to be a full audit, which included self-harm, suicidal ideations, depression, anxiety, all of the above. And also the Mental Health Commission are also doing a review in parallel to this, which I also welcome, and I'll come back in the next section.
Minister, I have to be honest with you. To me, the HSE are just not fit for purpose. Like you mentioned, 46% of ADHD, and that's all they wanted to audit. It'll be easy auditing when they're not actually seeing them. When the CAMHS haven't done an assessment for 6 months, what are they going to audit? You know, the next thing they'll be telling you, we won't do one for 12 months and we'll audit that year, and there's nothing to audit. The reality here is CAMHS in Wexford has 28 anorexic patients in the last 2 years. We do not have a paediatric dietitian. I have persistently asked for a full-time equivalent to be placed in Wexford. We haven't got more than a half-time, but we haven't filled the position. How long is it going to take the HSE to stop looking at their model of employment and telling me and writing to me for 2 years that they're following the model set down by the HSE? We need to apply on a critical skills basis for people outside the country. Permanent employees, it needs to be done today. It needed to be done yesterday. You're sick of hearing it, Minister. I'm sick of hearing it. Most of all, the patients are sick of hearing it. But when it comes to Wexford, I suppose what you say in relation to rotation would make practical sense at some level, but not in this case. I'll tell you why. The man has been in Wexford for 30 years. He made a complaint, a written complaint, about the consultant psychiatrist. And I'm telling you that now, and that's at the back of this. And I'm glad to hear there's an audit, because this man won't be moving on the 16th of May. And we're going to be down a clinical nurse specialist, either in the north or in CAMHS in Arden House. He's not going anywhere. He's certainly not moving. He didn't ask to move. There isn't a need for him to move. There are 4 clinical nurse specialists in the north. 4. There's only 2 in Wexford. One's going on maternity leave. She has 10 years' experience, and both are going to be replaced with a lesser clinical nurse, one who is acting with less than 2 years' experience. So I don't mean to raise my voice to you. I know perfectly well you and I have come through this together. We're both learning, but I'm learning very quickly because I've now been getting the same letters for 2 years. I can't stick it anymore. It's not good enough to be providing a service in name only.
Okay.
We have to show the fruits.
Minister Butler.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Look, the first thing I want to say, these decisions in relation to staff rotation is part and parcel of strategic workforce planning. That decision is taken by the local area director of nursing, who are completely entitled to do that. The second point I want to make is this year over the last 2 years, I secured an extra €97 million for mental health, and it's the largest budget ever. And I will always be looking for more while I'm in this post. I will always look for more. But what I have to say is there are some positives out there. So because of the budget I secured last year, 55 new staff were hired into CAMHS all throughout the country. One of them was the psychologist that we speak about. 45 people were hired into eating disorder teams. There's a new eating disorder team coming to CHO5 this year. It'll be towards the end of the year. So it's you know, because I'm building them, not for paediatric, for adult first, and then it'll be paediatric. So what I have to do is I have to put 16 in place. I'll have 9 at the end of this year. It's incremental. It's the only way we can get the staff, and that's what we're doing. But I think it's also important to point out, we know CAMHS is a specialist service, and it's for people under 18 with moderate to severe mental health difficulties. It's not for everyone, and only a small percentage of young people, 2% of young people, will need the support of CAMHS. But sometimes what happens is that young people are referred by their GPs or by their families or by one of the NGOs to CAMHS. But primary care is probably more suitable for them, and they're not always accepted. They don't always meet the criteria for CAMHS, and that's a clinical decision that I can't interfere with. That's a decision that is taken by the clinicians to determine whether they can give the best support. We have seen an exponential growth in relation to eating disorders. When the clinical programme was devised back in 2016-2017, they expected 60 referrals. We had 504 last year. So the capacity is just being pushed. And that's what I'm trying to do, put the capacity back into it.
So the 40